Illinois Supreme Court Commission on Professionalism to Civility. Connecting lawyers, inspiring change. Justice David Cerda. Profiles in Professionalism series. Interviewed by Jane Reardon, Executive Director.
So, Justice Cerda, your parents immigrated to Chicago from Mexico, and you were the first in your family to graduate from high school. Can you share a little bit about your upbringing?
The Honorable David Cerda, retired Illinois Appellate Court Justice.
My father came from Mexico during the Mexican Revolution, and from one state, the state of Michoacan, and my mother came, my father came to the States in 1915, and he was a railroad track worker, and he would work for a while and go to a frontier town or go into Monterrey and across the border back again. My mother was a different state, the state of Guanajuato, and she also fled with her family to Chicago. She arrived in Chicago in 1917. My father had about 4 years of education, and my mother had about 6 years of education. I was born in 1927 here in Chicago, and during those years it was very difficult. I saw a picture where I was in, took place about 1928 or 29. It was in a picnic area where there were hundreds of Mexicans there. But then came the Depression, and then it was very hard for Mexicans because the Mexicans were taking jobs from away from Americans, and so there was a lot of deportations. We had about 30,000 Mexicans in Chicago at that time, but we lost about 35 to, we went down to we lost about 35 to 40% of the Mexican population. Some went back voluntarily, others were picked up at random from the streets, and others were pushed out by welfare agencies like Hull House. They would get buses, they give them bus fare to go back to Mexico. And the judicial system, the police system was very not. There was one judge, Thomas Green, a municipal court judge, had the Mexican consul arrested. That he brought to court and put behind bars. He was. This is according to a Berkeley, California newspaper. And when they found out, then it was released. He had it stricken from the record, so there's no record of the Mexican consul ever being, arrested. But that was the atmosphere. They would pick up, just would not deport, but some would. They would be arrested for no reason and not charged, and then released the next day. There's many instances of those cases. So it was not, those were hard times at the beginning.
After high school, I understand that you were in the U.S. Navy.
Yes.
Tell us about
yes,
that.
At the age of 17, I volunteered for the U.S. Navy, and we were, luckily, the war was over a short time afterwards. I joined in June of 1945, and I was discharged in August of 1946. I had the GI Bill, and also some 3 buddies of mine in the Navy decided they enrolled at the University of Illinois Champaign, and I was invited. I had no plans at that time to go to college. So if it weren't for the 2 things, the GI Bill and my friends who invited me to go with them to the University of Illinois, who knows, my career might have taken a different path. After that, I worked for the Dr. Scholl Manufacturing Company. And then I thought that if I was going to work for some corporation, I should go down to Mexico City, where I had my Aunt Esther living there. And I lived with her and attended the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. and I studied 1 year of pre-law and 1 year of civil law. Then, yes, I came back and I went to the University of DePaul.
You spent about a decade as a sole practitioner after you graduated, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your practice.
I had a law office in South Chicago. First, I worked for one lawyer. I had a general practice, and I worked for another lawyer, general practice again. And this was in the South Chicago community, which was the oldest Mexican community in the city of Chicago. It was very rewarding to be able to help the people with their problems.
And why did you make the choice to journey toward being a judge?
The Judicial Reform Act was passed, I think it took effect in 1964. And I read about the numerous openings there were for judges. And I thought that someday I would, apply to become a judge. But what happened was that the Mayor Daley got in contact with the Mexican community, and they had a committee to nominate someone or submit a name to Mayor Daley for appointment. And I was invited to be interviewed. Later on, I received a telephone call to appear in court to be sworn in to buy a robe. And that's how I became a judge.
That must have been exciting for you.
It was very exciting for me. It was very exciting for me and for the community. I think it showed that we have gained a little respect, that the Latino community was being recognized, for the first time. And it took quite a while, from the time say during World War I until 1965. So it took a long, long time before the community could produce a judge.
After that year or so, you ran?
I was elected as an associate judge. And because of the Constitution of 1970, all the associate judges were made circuit court judges.
And you remained a circuit court judge for over 20 years, right?
I think, yes, until 1989, when I was April 3rd of 1989, I was assigned to the appellate court in 1989.
Right.
And I served until 2002.
I saw in a newspaper article you were quoted as saying about the time when you were the only Latino judge on the circuit court, "I longed for another Latino judge to come on the bench. I wished I wasn't alone." Can you reflect on the importance of diversity in the legal profession and on the bench?
Mm-hmm. I think that the larger community would like to see more Latinos, lawyers, and Latino judges on the bench, because they know that we understand the concerns of the community perhaps better than they do. We've let others do the work for us and decide for us, but now it's time for us to assume greater responsibility. We need more of lawyers to go into the community, to serve on to do pro bono work. I know we're doing that more than before, but with a greater number, you could produce more.
What ideas do you have to increase the representation?
I think that we have to talk to the parents more than we do. I know we talk to the students in high school, but the parents, many of the parents, especially the recent immigrants, don't have the same ideas about education that other ethnic groups when they come to the United States. And we have to talk more to parent organizations, and they will encourage their children and not discourage them like they did around the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when they thought that the girl's place is in the home. She should not go to college. She should not get away from us. That she will be a housewife and bear children, and that's very important.
I read about your recent honor by the new Illinois Latino Judges Association. Can you talk about the significance of that new organization?
Yes, in the early 1990, about 1990, we thought about forming a Latino judges organization, but we didn't have the numbers at that time. But now, thanks to the leadership of Chief Judge Ruben Castillo, the organization has finally been formed. And now I think one is that we have a lot of interest by other Latin American countries, and we can meet some of these judges here in Illinois, and they're interested in our system of law, so we will be able to communicate with them and welcome them to visit our courts and to see how they could improve their systems of justice. But also, I think we have to serve. We have more judges now that could serve on visiting the schools. They have a little bit, just a little bit, they're just as good as the lawyers, but they have a little bit more respect, probably.
How important was mentoring to your career?
It was very, very important to me, and especially from someone who I grew up with who became a lawyer before I did. And he was the one that urged me to go to South Chicago and establish an office there. I didn't at first, but then I finally did, and he was right. I found a home there. And also, I was able to mentor Judge Consuelo Bedoya. While starting out in grammar, I strike that in law school, and we helped her to become a judge. And she in turn mentored a lawyer who became a judge, Patricia Mendoza. And now Patricia Mendoza is mentoring someone else to join the ranks. So I could see how mentoring works. It is successful, and I know that we have now mentors who can mentor young law school students.
Justice Cerda, how would you like to be remembered?
I think I would like to be remembered as an ordinary person who was very lucky in life. But I think that I reflect the ability of many Latinos who never had the opportunities that I had. I'm proud to have been a lawyer and a judge. Very proud of that. My parents didn't have a chance to urge me to go to college, because at that during the 1940s, the only concern was the war, and I was going to be going into the military service, and something could happen to me in the military service. So they never thought about college at that time. So my idea of going to college came from my Navy buddies, and not from my parents. That's how it happened.
A lot of life is serendipitous.
It is, yes.
To Civility, connecting lawyers, inspiring change.